Entering the chat Monday night, Ben Kendall. I think I appropriately glowed him up, pumped his tires. He just had a standout game, did Ben Kendall.
And now it's time for No Pucks Given with Dan Kingerski of Pittsburgh Hockey Now. Penguin Scoop's locker room buzz and straight-up analysis. No fluff, all hockey. Now, here's Dan.
It's 106 miles to Pittsburgh. I've got a full tank of gas and, well, a half pack of cigarettes. It's dark. I'm wearing sunglasses or something like that. I'm Dan Kingerski on the Pittsburgh Hockey Now platforms, and we'll release this as a podcast. I think it's time to put this travel day to good use and really talk about the players on the bubble, the young players, the veterans who may or may not be on the roster in October. Now, I know there are a few players you're just dying to see on the roster. I see you passing around the screenshots when I give your favorite player a bad grade, and that's the only reason I do it. I mean, not because I'm being honest or because the player only played marginally well. No, that's not why I gave Philip Hallander a C+ a couple of games ago. No. I did it because I don't know anything about hockey, don't you know? Monday night, as we look at all these players fighting for space, Monday was Hallander's first breakout game. The first time he pushed himself beyond his comfort zone. The first time he made an impact on the game. There is a difference between playing good. Hey, listen, he was fine, he was good, he played well, versus making an impact. On Monday, you saw him hold on to the puck. You saw him take it deep. You saw him distribute. His defensive game is naturally solid, so that part really isn't to worry about. But I thought he really elevated that line with Philip Thomasino and Tommy Novak. I don't know that I was enamored with Philip Tomasino's performance, having a night to sleep on it. Novak and Thomasino were fine, and Novak will be on the roster. Thomasino, I don't know. I really don't. I think that decision might rest on other players because he had a very solid game against Detroit a couple of preseason games ago. He was tepid. He had some moments. He played as kind of well as you expect, but he does have to be better because the Penguins team, the depth is better now. He's one guy that I think the coaches and Kyle Dubas and I might disagree on, wherein he makes the roster, and I kind of shake my head and say this player or that player should have made it. That's where Thomasino is. So, I think down in Wilkes-Barre, you might have a Hallander and Thomasino pairing. It really is possible. That's the forwards, at least the young forwards, Bros being in. Entering the chat Monday night, Ben Kendall. I think I appropriately glowed him up, pumped his tires. He just had a standout game, did Ben Kendall. And it wasn't because he scored a goal 3.5 minutes into the game. That actually was largely set up by Ryan Shea. Now, Kendall showed some good finishing ability, kind of widening the stick, creating a greater field or a greater field to shoot. Forcing Gibson to not know where Kendall was going, and Kendall, snapped a good wrister to the glove side, beats a good goalie, John Gibson. Not, even if that moment didn't happen, I still would be saying this morning that Kendall is suddenly a contender to make the team because he has played well defensively. You see his hockey IQ, especially in the defensive zone, where he is able to read plays quickly, put himself in between players and steal the puck. He's gritty enough, But his skating, now that he's playing more confidently, now that he's kind of just thrown caution to the wind and going for it, his skating has improved a full step. On that goal last night, he beat his defender to the net, outskated him. I don't think we would have seen that from Kendall a week ago, 2 weeks ago, when he was sort of playing timid and just feeling his way through that. Does he make the NHL roster, Dan? I think it is up to him. If he performs as he did Monday, on Wednesday in Buffalo, is it Friday, the last preseason game, Friday at home against Buffalo? Listen, I'm day to day. If he performs that well in the next 2 games, Ben Kendall is a Pittsburgh Penguin on opening night, bar none. They're not going to send him back to junior, not the 11th overall pick, if he's playing this well. I do caution you, before you go buying your Ben Kendall jersey, remember last season, Harrison Brunick was in the exact same spot. And Brunick had a step back over the last couple of days as the intensity, as the game got quicker, as players, NHL players, prepared for the season. Brunick looked, didn't look as good. He looked a little bit overmatched, and the Penguins said the time wasn't right, especially for a defenseman. For a forward, it's a little easier. You can bury him on the 3rd or 4th line and bring him along a little bit more slowly, a little slower. So you have to like his chances based on his trajectory and his path. Leave it there. Just don't get any expectations or you'll probably be disappointed. But if you're like really itching to see him, he's got a chance. Obviously, guys like Anthony Mantha, Justin Brazeau are in the lineup on opening night. Danton Heinen, as we look at some veterans, probably not. It becomes a numbers game. If you want to keep the young players, you can't keep Danton Heinen. Blake Lizotte, easy yes. I don't know why some of you are so down on Blake Lizotte. I don't get it. You have to explain this to me. Here is a scrappy, speedy, 4th-line center who fills that role with aplomb. Not a plum, not an apple, not pear, but a plum. He does everything you ask of a 4th-line center, chips in a little bit of offense. Actually, he gets kind of streaky. He can chip in a little bit more offense once or twice a season. He'll go on a 5 or 6 game tear. You need guys like him, that speed. Connor Doer has had a really good preseason. This is one of those bubble players where Dubas and Muse sit down and look at each other. If they purely base it on training camp, you're like, well, he should make it. There's that word, should. Deserves to make it. But given his pedigree, his history, I think they slide him through waivers if the young players prove worthy over the next couple of games. I think he is an undeserving cut, would be Connor Doer. Kind of the Thomasino I put sort of in that same boat where sure he could play in the NHL. He's going to get you 25 points. Maybe with a hot streak he hits 30, but you begin to weigh the ceiling versus the floor and where you're at with other players. And actually where you're at as an organization. All of that really matters. Ville Koivunen on the roster. Rucker McGroarty will start, I think, on injured reserve, if not long-term injured reserve. But on the roster. Robbie Fabry. Here's another guy who is in danger of being an undeserving cut. Having watched him play center last night, he wasn't as good at center as he has been on the wing. That, I think, was obvious. You know, with the extra defensive responsibilities, it didn't work for me. I would have preferred they keep him on the wing. He's played professionally well. You know, he's had his legs. He's been physical. He's gotten after the puck. You know, if you look at his production over the course of his 9-year career versus, say, Philip Thomasino, Fabry has better production from a bottom 6 standpoint, and he's more versatile. He can do more things to help you win when he's not scoring. Will they pick up the PTO and lose Thomasino, Doer in the process? I think I would. I think that's how I would handle it. I don't know if that's how the Penguins are going to handle it. Let me scroll down here. I'm keeping the list handy. I'm not looking at it, at least very long. Anyway, I'm just glancing at it. Yeah, Tristan Brose is on. And Avery Hayes, that's going to be a tough cut, but nevertheless, I mean, he had a good game on Monday, did Hayes. He was part of that Kendall and Koivunen line. He's a good puck getter. He's a good puck retriever, puck pressure guy. Is he indispensable on the NHL roster? No, I think guys like Doer have outplayed him. So I think Avery Hayes goes back to Wilkes-Barre. What I don't know about Hayes, and I'm sorry to disappoint some of you by saying that, what I don't know about Hayes is if he's reached his ceiling or if he's just getting there. You know, if he needs a bit more of an NHL look, a bit more seasoning, and can further improve. I don't know. I'm interested. That's to say the least. You have to love the underdog, the undrafted underdog who has fought as hard as he has and has risen as far as he has. Yeah, I just don't think he gets there. Another guy who has actually had a really good training camp who won't make the team is Sam Poulin. Now, I wandered over and talked to Poulin on Monday morning after the morning skate. Here is a guy coming to grips with his career path. You saw the fight in Montreal. He still got a bit of a shiner. I mean, it's better, but it's still black and blue. It hasn't reached the yellow stage yet. I don't know if he'll add fighting. He was kind of. He didn't say no. He didn't say yes when I said, well, you know, you're going to look to add dropping the gloves to your repertoire. And he was like, well, if it's there, I'm not going to be looking for it. So I suppose he's not going to go the Bissonnette route, where Bissonnette was an offensive defenseman at one point and realized his path to the show was as a glove-dropping left winger. Hey, whatever gets you there, right? Rafael Harvey-Pinard, I've loved his camp. I think he is on the roster. It's hard to say that. You're like, well, Dan, what about Doer? I just think Pinard has a little more offense than Doer, a bit more physicality because he's a little bulkier, a little stockier than Doer. So when Pinard, their speed very similar, and how they puck pursue and the pressure they can apply, very similar. But Pinard can be a little more physical, a little grittier, and has a bit more offensive pop, I think. So that gives him the edge over Doer because Harvey-Pinard could jump up to the third line if and when necessary. You don't mind giving him 14 minutes on a particular evening, where Doer, you probably don't want to give him that much because most nights he's kind of a one-dimensional defense sort of player. And that kind of wraps up the prospects. I did mention Ben Kendall. I've had to do a couple takes. If I haven't mentioned Ben Kendall, I think I did, right? I'm going to repeat it. Because here is a guy in the same situation as Harrison Brunick was last year, inserts himself into the conversation. The team obviously would love to have their 11th overall pick make the squad, and he played, easily played well enough. Both ends of the rink, he really controlled the play in the offensive zone, dishing it to Koivunen, and Koivunen dishing it back to Kendall. They really had a good chemistry going. And the puck pursuit that Kendall has shown is better. And his willingness to go to the net, that wasn't in the scouting report. when all the draftniks did their scouting reports, he was a playmaker and high hockey IQ. Well, he's realizing his path to the NHL includes getting a foot in the blue paint. And if he can continue this trajectory, this progression that he's shown over the last couple of games, over the last week, he's in. But that's easier said than done, because now the NHL players are going to play the last couple of games. You're going to see the NHL regulars in Buffalo on Wednesday, the Sabres NHL regulars. So we'll get a really good look at some of these Penguins young players like Bros and Kendall and down the line and Hallander, and how they handle the speed of the game, that it's going to take a step forward once again. I tend to think most of them will be just fine. Kendall's the one to, hasn't seen this before, and you'll know. You'll know if Ben Kendall is going to make the team or not. If it's in doubt, he doesn't, because there are other deserving players, but if it's not in doubt, he certainly will. Let's talk about the defense now. In fact, for those of you on the podcast side, we are going to pause here, take a quick break, and be back after this. All right. Now, let's talk about the defensemen. Because I think this I have no idea how to handicap this battle for you. On the left side, it's much easier for me. I think Ryan Shea has looked very good this preseason. His rush and setting up Kendall last night was exactly what you'd want. I mean, Shea can play on all three pairings. He's playing confident, playing assertive. He's playing fast, and he's playing crisp. Skating away from trouble, skating away from forecheckers, but not doing so recklessly where he's just taking the puck and skating until there's no skating left. It's with intent. For my money, Ryan Shea makes the team easily at the expense of Ryan Graves. I do think if there's a lefty you're going to have to sacrifice, it would be Graves. Just for the silly penalties that he's taken in his couple or a few games this preseason, for the way he's played the last couple of years, he's just going to have to sort of deal with his comeuppance, at least in my universe. He's had a better training camp. His gaps have been better, and he's bodied up near the net. I don't know. The last couple of regular seasons have been so rough that it's tough to erase that from the memory banks, especially when Shea is sort of claiming his spot. Parker Wotherspoon has been great. We all sort of wonder, geez, why hasn't Matt Grzelcyk signed anywhere? When you see Grzelcyk compared to Wotherspoon, like, oh, what a difference. What a difference that has been. And I think that's the way it's going to be. Wotherspoon is probably going to play with Erik Karlsson. And I did not get nabbed for speeding. I guess you probably couldn't see in the white. There was an ossifer sitting back there. Whew. I guess that's what you get for setting the cruise control at an appropriate speed once in a while. Anyway, Wotherspoon has been really good. 6'1", $190, $195, and just plays like it. A little bit of physical, plays quickly, crisp passes, very much like Shea. As Mike Sullivan used to say about Ryan Shea, he's got some moxie. Okay, I'll go with that word. Sandpaper, just, a bit of jam, not a ton, but enough that you notice that Ryan Shea won't back down, and Witherspoon kind of has a very similar game. I think Owen Pickering has to be in the NHL. If they sacrificed him to the AHL, first of all, you could knock me over with a feather. But second of all, you begin to wonder about the organization's feelings about him long term. So he hasn't played in a lot of preseason games. It's important to set expectations for his game. This is not a 40-point defenseman. This is not a 200-hit guy. This is a defenseman. And I don't know that Owen has entirely come to that conclusion yet. And maybe he shouldn't come to any limiting conclusions. Maybe that would be really stupid on his part to not strive to be, a 40-point, 200-hit guy. But what I really see him blossoming into is just as valuable. A real Marcus Pettersson type. A guy who's about 6'5" with a condor's wingspan, a good hockey IQ, who can take away lanes, who can defend at the net, who isn't going to try too hard, or I shouldn't say try too hard, try too much, doesn't get beyond himself. That's Pickering's biggest challenge to me, is having the confidence to stay within himself. He's done that this preseason. When he did that last year for, say, 20 games, easily an NHL defenseman. Whether he's the defensive piece on a top 4 pairing, or whether he's a bit more assertive on the 3rd pairing, I don't know. Now, the right side. Any one of the back 4 guys could make the roster, and there'd be no argument. You're looking at Connor Clifton, Matt Dumba, Harrison Brunick, even Jack St. Ivany. St. Ivany has been the least of the 4. So I can probably confidently say he's going to lose the battle. Doesn't mean he should. Doesn't mean he deserves to. It just means the Penguins have some better options there. Let's start with Connor Clifton. Here is a guy who has over 200 hits in each of the last 3 seasons. Now, he wasn't crazy about his season last year with Buffalo. He played 73 games. He did find himself in the press box. His career high is only 23 points set a few years ago. So it's not like he's going to put up a lot of points. But you've seen in the preseason, the guy hits everything that moves. Everything. You have to like that. And what he told me after the game, where were we on Monday? Was Monday Columbus? Or was Wednesday Columbus? No, we were definitely in the Columbus locker room. Listen, the games are already blending all into one gelatinous blob for me. You're like, no, Kingerski, it was this game, that game. Listen, they're all, each town looks the same to me, the movies and the factories. Clifton said, listen, I'm playing primarily against 3rd and 4th line guys. They're going to finish their checks. It's important for me to bring that element to them. The Penguins did acquire him via trade for Connor Timmins. So, what are you going to say? Ordinarily, he'd be slotted as the 3rd pairing guy. But then, as we mentioned, Harrison Brunick. Last year, he faltered in the last preseason game or so and didn't make the squad. This year, he clearly is too good to go back to junior. The NHL and CHL did not or have not come to an agreement to allow a 19-year-old in the American Hockey League. So, kiss that goodbye. You'd have to think if that deal were going to be made, it would have been done. Or at least teams would be apprised that it's close or, to make plans in the eventuality that it comes to fruition. It hasn't. So I don't think the AHL is an option for Brunick, which creates a real sort of problem. He's going to have to earn that 3rd pairing spot. Not only is Clifton playing well, Matt Dumba is playing really well. Dallas in its very buttoned down, structured defensive game under Pete DeBoer, under Pete DeBoer, and Jim Montgomery, I should say. No, it was Pete DeBoer all season. Forgive me. It just wasn't for Dumba. So, putting him in a Penguin sweater, turning him loose, you've seen how well he can play. He really can use his feet to get out of trouble. He's got the vision. He's got the hockey sense. I know it's preseason, but he's looked every bit an NHL defenseman. Now, he and I had sort of an uncomfortable moment. Not of my making. Listen, and for the first time, it wasn't my fault. But I talked to him, Sunday morning. I wandered over and we had a chat. And I just asked him about his thoughts on the battle and being embroiled in it and, how you handle that. And, he started the cliche answer. You try not to think about it. You don't want your head to go there. And then his head went there. And his voice sort of trailed off. And you could see he was seeing the possibility. And I felt terrible. Listen, I don't like to interrupt players when they're speaking. That's, But in this case, I interrupted him and said, well, geez, I didn't mean to ask, didn't mean to make it uncomfortable. Let's talk about something else. He's like, no. And he regrouped, but you could see in that moment that he realized it was possible. That was uncomfortable for me as well. Believe me. I'm not there to, stir up trouble. I don't shy away from hard questions. And it was a, valid, honest question. How are you feeling in this battle? What are your thoughts on it? How are you performing? As I asked Ryan Shea basically the same question, and Shea was 100% positive. Shea and I talked for several minutes. I only had him on the record for like 30 seconds. And that's just because I kind of got the one quote that I needed, how much different his mindset is this year, how much more assertive and confident and comfortable he is playing on the left side. Now, Mike Sullivan had him on the right side almost exclusively because that's what the Penguins needed. Now that the Penguins have more than enough right-siders, he's getting a real shot to show what he can do. And, maybe a tangent here, we'll get back to Dumba. This is, Shea's first chance in the NHL to show what he can do in his natural position. He was sort of buried in the Dallas organization for a few years. Kyle Dubas rescues him. Dubas has an encyclopedic knowledge of some players who deserve a shot, to Dubas's credit. And Ryan Shea was one of those guys he went right after and plucked out of the Dallas system. He's now 28. You can't call Ryan Shea a prospect, but by the same token, he's not played a lot of NHL hockey. And where his ceiling is, you actually don't know. With Dumba, you do know where his ceiling is. He's a 30-point right-handed defenseman who's kind of an all-round guy. I think that moniker of an athletic, offensive sort of guy has faded into a more reasonable, 25 points, do some penalty killing. If he has to do, some power play 2 work. But otherwise, he's just going to be a guy that fills a role on your right side. Probably in this case, third pairing would be a perfect third pairing. So between the three, Brunick, Clifton, and Dumba, I have no idea what the Penguins will do with that. Because don't forget, every player you keep past the 13th forward and past the 7th defenseman means somebody else who's deserving has to go. It's going to be a long night when they sit down to start making final decisions. there's going to be a player or three who get that call who definitely don't deserve it. In fact, as I tell you that Harvey-Pinard deserves me on the roster, he's very much in danger of being one of those guys who gets that call. So Kevin Hayes' injury status will certainly play a role. I shouldn't speculate. I can tell you that Hayes left rink 2 on day 1 after getting thumped by Ryan Graves, sort of favoring his shoulder/arm. I was sitting over on rink 1, and it looked like he was getting help walking. But once you kind of put it in context that maybe his shoulder or, his arm were injured, what I saw as somebody helping him walk was actually somebody sort of steadying, balancing, bracing, his arm, kind of in a sling fashion with both hands. So there's no guarantee that Hayes comes back in mid-October. There's no guarantee he doesn't need surgery and all of that can come with a shoulder injury. That can be, a bit of a nightmare, especially for a player in his 30s, and especially for a player on, who's on the final year of his contract. If you've got several years left, maybe you try to play through something. Maybe you fight through a nagging injury all season and take care of it in the off season. But if you're facing the final year of a contract and you have to sign somewhere else next year, maybe you get it taken care of now so you have the end of the season. These are all possibilities. And we still really don't know what the deal is with Rucker McGroarty. We just know an upper body injury. We know there is no timetable. We know that Kyle Dumba said because of his age, they were basically letting him rest. They were just sort of keeping him out, and they don't want him to have a nagging injury at this point in his career. So makes sense to me. But a timeline? We asked again Monday or Sunday. Still no timeline. I think I've hit every bubble player. If I've missed one, you can drop one in the comments. Do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, do all of that. And I've probably killed 30, 35 miles, and I appreciate you hanging out with me here on this podcast. No pucks given here on the Pittsburgh Hockey Now platforms, and download it everywhere, including Odyssey. And we thank you for your support. Have fun.